What's up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. As always, I am your host, Tony Mango. Originally, I was going to be doing this with Steven Wego, but we've got some issues over on his end with Comcast, so blame them for another solo one. But today, what we're going to be doing is getting an early jump start on next week's duet of special events. I'm going to be giving my predictions for NXT TAKEOVER Toronto, running down my thoughts on what I think is going to be happening on the matches that are currently scheduled to take place, and if I want to yak about something else, then I'll yak on with some kind of side notes and tangents and whatever the hell else ends up popping up. We still have one more episode of NXT to take place, so keep in mind that some things might change. Maybe they'll add a match or tweak something with an extra stipulation or whatever, but since the majority of this stuff has been recorded well in advance, it's not looking like there are really going to be any surprises. So if they do end up doing that, then the updated predictions will, of course, be on smarkoutmoment.com itself. I'll update them as soon as maybe like the day before the event or anything like that. This is just going to cover the 5 matches that we have at the lineup at the moment, which are the NXT Championship 2 out of 3 Falls match, Roode versus Dillinger, the NXT Women's Championship match, the Dusty Rhodes Tournament Finals, and the NXT Championship match. So let's start this off with the tag team matches because they're kind of combined together in a sort of way. The only reason that we're having the championship match is because those two people weren't involved in the tournament finals, so we got to kind of talk about them all in a mix here. So the tournament itself, this is the second year that they've done this. First year, it ended up going to Finn Balor and Samoa Joe, which I didn't think was going to be the case for part of it. Part of it made me think that it was going to lead to a heel turn, and then they kind of didn't do the heel turn for a little bit, but I don't think we're going to get anything here where there's going to be some kind of a heel turn or any kind of like big important things with the tournament. I think that the way that they've lined this up isn't exactly how they were planning on doing it. I mean, obviously not exactly because we don't have some of the people that have been involved were injured and such, but I think that the finals still came down to the people that they wanted to have in the finals. I don't think that that's changed all that much. So let's recap a little bit of what actually happened in this tournament. We had TM61 beat Tino Sabatelli and Riddick Moss, and then in the second round, they beat Austin Aries and Roderick Strong, because Roderick Strong was the only one that wrestled in the match because Austin Aries was injured. They had beaten Heavy Machinery, Tucker Knight, and Otis Dozovic, which is a much better name than whatever he was going by for. It was like Nico, whatever the hell else was. I can't even remember. Otis Dozovic is a lot easier to pronounce. The big guys there lost, and Austin Aries and Roderick Strong seemed like they were going to be having some kind of a future match with Hideo Itami and Kota Ibushi. But Kota Ibushi and TJ Perkins were the ones that were in the tournament because Hideo Itami got injured. So that's actually something else I wanted to talk about here. They had built up Austin Aries versus Hideo Itami, and now both guys are injured. So we couldn't even get Roderick Strong versus Kota Ibushi to replace them because Kota Ibushi is not a main roster member. Or, well, actually, he's not a main roster member. None of these people are main roster members, but he's not actually even signed to WWE. He only wants to do separate, like, side things. So he's a non-permanent member of the roster. Roderick Strong just came in, so they can't even have the replacements of those. TJ Perkins ended up signing up with Kota Ibushi. He beat Lince Dorado and Mustafa Ali. Bobby Roode and Ty Dillinger, we're going to get to them in a little bit, but they lost to Sanity, who made their debut. And Sanity beat Kota Ibushi and TJ Perkins. So that might have been a little bit of a switch up right there. Maybe Sanity weren't supposed to beat them, but I highly doubt it. I think that Austin Aries and Roderick Strong wouldn't have come across Hideo Itami and Kota Ibushi. Not necessarily, maybe, but it would have came down to Austin Aries versus Hideo Itami at TakeOver instead. So that's why I don't think that they really would have clashed all that much. But on the one side of the tournament here, we have TM61 beats Roderick Strong to move on to beat Sanity. So TM61's in the finals. Sanity is not. And that's actually pretty surprising because Sanity is brand new, and you would think that they would get this heel team, they'd bring them in, they'd win all their matches, the same kind of setup. But I'm actually kind of a fan of the fact that they didn't do that, because now they don't need to carry on some kind of undefeated streak, and they don't need to worry about losing by disqualification and all that kind of stuff like that. If you just lose a match, you lost a match. Who cares? you can still be credible. You can still be the champions down the line, and I think that might end up happening, but I don't think it's going to happen as soon as a lot of other people think, too. Because I got a feeling here, we're going to look at another Wyatt family situation where they're not actually going to win those titles anytime soon. So TM61 is on one side of the tournament. The other side of the tournament, the Authors of Pain is in the finals. Now, the road that they went to get there, they defeated the Bollywood Boys, which everybody saw that coming, although I do like the Bollywood Boys, so I hope that they stick around. Then No Way Jose and Rich Swann, two people that I'm not too big of a fan of, but ended up working really well together, and I actually like both of them so much more now that they teamed up. They had beaten Tony Nese and Drew Gulak. Ugh, still hate that name. But they lost to the Authors of Pain. Then we had the Revival beat Andrade Cien Almas and Cedric Alexander, and they've had their own little bit of a thing going on where they had their match together. Cedric Alexander defeated Andrade, and he seemed like he was going to turn heel, and then they teamed up together. They lost the match, and then he actually did turn heel. Now, they've wrestled a match together, and Andrade Almas defeated Cedric Alexander, spoiler alert, for next week. And I think that's the end of the feud. We don't really have that much time on the card to be able to add multiple more matches to it, so I don't think that we're going to get another Alexander Almas card match or for TakeOver. I mean, I think that this was the blow-off for it, was just the week or the episode before TakeOver, and that's a little bit disappointing because I actually, as much as I don't like Andrade Almas, I wanted this heel turn to go somewhere, and I was hoping that he would at least end up facing No Way Jose, because he isn't on the card either, and it's really odd that we have a lot of people not on this card. Those two aren't. Obviously, Hideo Itami and Austin Aries can't be, but Roderick Strong, and that makes sense. It's not too weird. But Sanity isn't on the card either, so it's all kind of up in the air. Cedric Alexander makes sense for him not to be on the card. He's going to be on 205 Live and everything. But the Revival, they beat them. DIY, who, that name still just, it sucks. Hashtag DIY is totally not the name for a tag team, and I hope that they just abandon it. They defeated Ho Ho Lun and Tian Bing. I think it's Tian Bing, or is it Tian Bing? I don't know. If my pronunciation is off, tell me in the comments below, but I think it's Tian. And it's Bin Wang. That's the guy's name, which is hilarious of a name. So that ended up resulting with the Revival against DIY, but the Revival didn't have that match. They said that Scott Dawson wasn't able to compete. He came out on crutches, and he said that they were just going to forfeit. So that led to the Authors of Pain against DIY, and with a little bit of help from the Revival, the Authors of Pain win. They go to the finals with TM61. So TM61 versus the Authors of Pain is in the finals, but as a result of what happened with that, William Regal grants DIY a title shot against the Revival. So this is where I had to group these all together, because I think that one match's outcome is totally dependent on the other one. I think if DIY wins, the Authors of Pain win. But I do have to go with the Revival being my choice, which means by default, I have to go with TM61 winning. Now, I don't like TM61. Nick Miller and Shane Thorne seem fine in the ring, kind of shitty on the mic, no personality whatsoever. They're pretty much generic dudes. These are the average guys that you would see in any indie scene. They don't have any kind of identity to themselves. I still don't get why TM61 is the name. I know that they were the Mighty Don't Kneel, so that's where the Mighty, the TM, comes in. But the 61, that's the area code for wherever they're from or whatever. That sucks. The Mighty area code? That's awful. And WWE still doesn't even know if they want to hyphenate it or not. It's a mess. Between TM61 and DIY, they need to think of some better names, because the Authors of Pain is great. Sanity, it's fine, although that capitalization bugs the living shit out of me. If you know how bad I am when it comes to being a stickler for grammar, typing that out, it's like it crawls under my skin and everything. But that is something that I think you need to sort of take into account a little bit. The fact that TM61 is so bland. They beat Sanity to get into the finals, and I think that that's going to end up carrying them through to the finals, actually. The Authors of Pain are undefeated. You got to lose at some point, and they need a little bit more of a personality other than being just unstoppable, but they are great being unstoppable. And I think that they're kind of like the resurgence of the Ascension, back when the Ascension was great in NXT, they went to the main roster and they sucked, and they've sucked ever since. But they were great when they were this unstoppable force that just went through the entire tag team division. The Authors of Pain could be in that next ballpark of the next champions and stuff, but DIY, I can't imagine them winning the titles. So this is where all the caveats come in. 205 Live, and we're getting some deep cuts here. 205 Live has to be live, so that means it has to be on the WWE Network. That's why they're putting it on after SmackDown, because they don't have time necessarily to record elsewhere unless they were to do tapings live on like live events, which they don't really like to do all that much. They like to do like what the Cruiserweight Classic was, which you record a bunch of things in advance and you spread it out throughout the next couple of weeks and stuff. If you call it 205 Live, you can't do it that way. So 205 Live has to go on after SmackDown because they've got 3 hours for Raw, about a half hour or so for Superstars, and then for SmackDown, you've got 2 hours of SmackDown, half hour for Main Event. You got a little bit of leeway room to add another hour for SmackDown, which also means SmackDown is likely going to win that Cruiserweight Championship, and Kalisto is going to be the head of the division over on SmackDown. Taking that into account, they move from Raw to their own program, and that means they're going to need as many people for this division as possible. They have a lot of people in the division already, but 2 people that haven't come up yet are Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. Gargano and Ciampa can't win the NXT Tag Team Championships and still stay in NXT and be on the SmackDown main roster for 205 Live. So, they have to lose to the Revival, which means the Revival needs another tag team to face in the future. They either face TM61, Sanity, the Authors of Pain, or some kind of mixture of people. Noah Jose and Rich Swann can't be in there because Rich Swann is going to be a part of the Cruiserweight division. Tony Nese and Drew Gulak, same thing. Bollywood Boys, possibly the same thing. They might still stay in NXT. I think it would be good either way. Heavy Machinery, I don't know if they're babyface or heel, but they're certainly nowhere near ready to start getting tag team title shots. And if you look at the rest of the people on the list, I mean, we've got a lot of people who are not actually signed to the company. Like Ho Ho Lun, I think, is not signed. Chan Beng is far off from doing that. Andrade Almas is a heel, and he has no tag team partners. Cedric Alexander, he's on the Cruiserweight division. Roode and Dillinger, nope, that ain't happening. Lince Dorado, Cruiserweight. Mustafa Ali, not signed. Riddick Moss and Tino Sabatelli, they're heels, and they're not ready. Austin Aries and Roderick Strong, they're heels, and Austin Aries isn't going to wrestle for a while. So it all comes down to TM61, because Sanity and the Authors of Pain are heels, and unless the Revival turn babyface, which I highly doubt is going to happen, because their gimmick is basically just being those guys. Although it could happen. It's not like anything crazier has happened in WWE in the past. Anything can happen in WWE. But I think that what's happening here is TM61 is being set up to win the tournament, beating Sanity and the Authors of Pain, so they look really strong going into facing and defeating the Revival. The Revival could be losing those belts in Orlando or maybe beforehand. So we don't really know exactly what the next takeover is going to be. They said that there's going to be one before WrestleMania, which that's the Orlando one. I don't think that we're going to get one for the Royal Rumble. We could, but I don't think so. And if we get one maybe in February, then we're not going to get one in March or the end of April, or the beginning of April, for Orlando. So I got a feeling we're not going to get one until WrestleMania. So that's more than enough time for TM61 to do that. Although that's also more than enough time for the Revival to lose to TM61 on an NXT episode, and then for TM61 to face Sanity or the Authors of Pain in Orlando. That's more than enough time. So that's the transition that I think is what's going to be happening here. And that means trickling back down, the Revival has to beat DIY, so DIY can move up to the main roster, and then TM61 has to beat the Authors of Pain to be able to then get some kind of momentum to go forward, challenge for the championships, and then all square, and we're back in Kansas again. I don't know why I just did a reference to The Wizard of Oz. I fucking hate that movie. Ugh, God, that's terrible. Anyway, that means we got to backtrack a little bit to talk about another match, which is scheduled based off of the tournament. That tournament was the biggest thing that was happening, so of course a lot of things revolved around that. But one of those was a first round setup where Bobby Roode and Ty Dillinger were partnered up, which made a lot of sense because one of them is doing the Glorious gimmick, the other one's doing Perfect 10. Makes a lot of sense, right? So they have their match, and it seems like they're going to split up because Bobby Roode's a heel, Ty Dillinger is a babyface, and lo and behold, they split up because Bobby Roode's a heel and Ty Dillinger is a babyface. So that leads to the creation of the match that we are going to be talking about now, which is just pretty simple, Bobby Roode versus Ty Dillinger. This is a scenario where, as much as I like Ty Dillinger, and as much as I like Bobby Roode for that matter too, this isn't going to be a feud that lasts a whole lot of time. I mean, Dillinger has been making a lot of steps up in his career, and I think that he should be at least turning some heads. I don't really understand why he doesn't get any credit, but he is actually a damn good performer in a lot of different ways. So it's good to see him fight somebody who's going to be featured prominently. But the fact that Bobby Roode is Bobby Roode and that he is featured prominently means that's the reason why this match exists, not Ty Dillinger, which by default means Bobby Roode wins. He's not going to lose here to Ty Dillinger unless there's a longer plan that they have working for the next set of tapings where Dillinger gets the win here, and it's kind of a surprising win, and that leads to Bobby Roode flipping out, going nuts, because Bobby Roode, I think, is undefeated right now, and if he loses in like a quick roll-up kind of a scenario, that boosts up Dillinger a lot. And it doesn't really hurt Roode because he's Bobby Roode. I mean, this dude has won multiple championships in TNA. He's the biggest name that's in NXT right now. And if he can come up to the main roster at any time, he's not going to lose any steam. Same thing with Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe comes up to the main roster, he's a main eventer. Bobby Roode comes up to the main roster, he's a main eventer. And they can keep both those guys in the mid-card range, in the upper mid-card and stuff, but it's not going to be hard for them to go back up to the main event. So Dillinger kind of needs a little bit of a push. And I wouldn't be too shocked if he ended up winning just to kind of keep this going. Because again, we don't know when that NXT TakeOver, whatever the next one's going to be. So if they are going to just keep things going for weeks and months until Orlando separate and they're not going to have an NXT TakeOver event, then I think that this feud could continue a little bit. Because the next set of call-ups, I think, is going to happen post-Royal Rumble. Maybe not even actually until post-WrestleMania. So they might keep some of these guys around and do that kind of a thing. And if Dillinger is going to be sticking around a little bit longer than Roode, I think that could be the case. But I also think that Dillinger might be coming up. Because I think that Roode is the next champion. And then that gets into a little bit of the main event, but I'll get into it a little bit later. So with Roode and Dillinger, it's pretty much one or the other. Either Roode wins because he's Bobby Roode and he's the bigger priority, or Ty Dillinger wins to prolong the feud. It all depends on what their booking is, so that could really go either way. And although a lot of people would say that this is clearly Bobby Roode's match to lose, don't count out that possibility that Dillinger wins this just to keep the feud going. We've got a long time before WrestleMania. It doesn't seem like it, but it's only November. And if we got all of December, all of January, all of February, and all of March, and then it's WrestleMania time, we need to have a little bit of fallout from NXT TakeOver Orlando. We're talking, these people are going to be on the main roster maybe not until the end of April, maybe even May or June. So that's something to ponder about a little bit. I still think, though, gun to my head, I'd go with Bobby Roode winning the match, because that all, depending upon this and depending upon that, and if this continues and if they drag that out, all that stuff is pure speculation. And if you just got to go with the fact that this is a one-match scenario, if you look at all matches as a one-match scenario and that's who you pick, Bobby Roode beats Ty Dillinger. It's just, he's the more of a main event guy. He's the bigger priority. He's the bigger deal. He's what they're going to focus on more. He's undefeated, and Ty Dillinger is kind of a little bit of a gimmicky character that can lose. So I like Dillinger a lot. I like Roode a lot. I'm really excited to see this match. I don't think it'll be match of the night. though, because I don't think that they're going to give it that much time. But it still should be fun. I like both the guys. I hope that they both come up to the main roster, have a lot of success, have a lot of fun, that kind of stuff. But Roode's winning as far as I'm concerned. So we have 2 more matches to talk about. One of them is the NXT Women's Championship match. We had a lot of stuff over the past few weeks with Liv Morgan trying to challenge Asuka, getting her ass handed to her. Then we had the whole Peyton Royce and Billie Kay thing, predominantly Billie Kay more than anybody else, which she looks like a main roster woman right now. They've given her a little bit of a boost with her confidence or something, and then they gave her the new ring gear and the new music and all that. She looks like she legit should be on SmackDown right now, or Raw for that matter. Probably Raw needs her more than anything else. But Peyton Royce, she'll get there too. She's actually taking a lot of steps up forward. But we have a lot of people in this division that aren't quite ready. Liv Morgan still needs a lot of work. Beautiful girl, could get there eventually, but she's not there yet. And Aaliyah, she's pretty much just starting out. Ember Moon is actually probably the best set for the future, and she's still just starting out too. So they're working to build her up a little bit too. And we have a couple other people that are real far down on the totem pole. I mean, Mandy Rose, I don't think she's wrestled more than like 3 matches on the main roster for NXT. What's her name? I'm blank on her. Daria, she's maybe wrestled once. They've got Danielle Camella, which I don't even know if she's actually technically a part of the actual company, like if she's signed to NXT or if she's just still pure developmental or what. But it's basically revolved around nobody is able to beat Asuka. She's undefeated, and I think that she's going to be turning heel soon. This is probably the last time that we're going to see her, unless they do the Billie Kay thing, I don't know. This is probably going to be when she starts flat out turning heel. She's going up against Mickie James, which is not the ideal scenario for what they originally planned, because apparently the original plan was going to be Trish Stratus, which that's actually crazy to think that they were going to put Trish on an NXT show, but then it makes sense too, because why not? It's in Canada, she's Canadian, she'd get a huge pop, it would get people really interested, and you don't need to have her only at WrestleMania or so, but Trish is pregnant, and you can't have a pregnant woman wrestling in the ring, because that is totally not safe. So Mickie James steps in, and I'm a huge, huge fan of Mickie James. I think that she's one of, if not the best, women that they've ever had in WWE, TNA, any company. I think that she's just amazing. And she still looks good. I hope that she's able to still perform the way that she used to. No ring rust and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to the match. I think that it's going to be great. I do think that this is Asuka's match to lose, and I can't imagine Mickie James winning it for any reason whatsoever, because she's not an actual member of the roster anymore. She's certainly not their priority to book around. Asuka is. Asuka's undefeated. You don't have an undefeated person lose to a legend, you could call her now, with Mickie James, because Mickie James doesn't need the push. So this is going to be a great match for Asuka, that Asuka wins. And this could be where we see that full-on heel turn, because even though Mickie James isn't going to get the same response that Trish Stratus would have gotten, she's still going to get a good pop. And she's still the de facto babyface. So if they do some kind of sign at the end of like a respect, like, you know, give me a handshake, give me a hug, and Asuka nails Mickie in the head, then there you go. You got your heel Asuka. And heel Asuka can blow through the rest of the roster for a little bit, set up Ember Moon for the future, who I do think Ember Moon and Billie Kay and Peyton Royce are going to feud in the future. And that's going to set up Ember Moon for Orlando. Because eventually Asuka's got to lose, and eventually Asuka's got to go up to that main roster. And I think that post-WrestleMania is when we're going to see Asuka move up, because they need to start cycling in a couple different people. And Ember Moon, she's new, but she's been getting treated very, very well. So I think she's the one, she's going to be the one that beats Asuka in the end. And Liv Morgan, Billie Kay, those people, some of them are going to move out to the main roster eventually, probably Kay and Royce more than anybody else. Meanwhile, Liv Morgan, Aaliyah, Mandy Rose, and all that, they can still work in NXT. And, you know, we're going to get a new, fresh batch of women, new, fresh batch of men, too, because eventually they got to move up, too. And it all boils down to Asuka retains. That's what's going to happen here. Asuka's going to beat Mickie James. I'm going to be most excited of all just to see Mickie James, because I think that she is great. And by the way, if you are not a fan of Smark Out Moment by the time that we did it, and you're like newer, if you don't know, we did a huge, huge tournament back, oh God, what was it? October of 2012, maybe, where we started. That was the first ever Hottest Divas tournament, which at that time it was the Hottest Divas and TNA Knockouts in history. So I did every single person on the list that I could possibly imagine, and it went months and months. It took fucking forever. But the winner of the whole thing, the one that everybody had declared as the most attractive woman in wrestling history, was Mickie James. I was totally surprised. I thought it was going to be a handful of other people. I thought Maurice had a shot. I thought that Tori Wilson had a shot. Stacey Keibler had a shot, even though I wouldn't have necessarily voted for Stacey and Tori, though, I mean, come on, they're gorgeous. I thought that maybe the beautiful people, like Velvet Sky, I thought more so than anybody else had a good shot. Kelly, I thought had a great shot and all that at the time, but Mickie James ended up winning that, so she's forever tied to Smark Out Moment as our queen, basically. Other than, my personal choice was Sunny, but Mickie even retweeted it at the time. It was a good thing like that. So it's nice to see her back, too, because we get to see Mickie again. We haven't seen her in a while. So I'm excited for that one. And I'm also kind of excited, but not as much, for the main event, which is going to be Shinsuke Nakamura defending his NXT Championship against Samoa Joe. Now, we talked about Asuka having an undefeated streak. We talked about the Authors of Pain having an undefeated streak. So does Shinsuke Nakamura. Although, I think this is the exact same scenario with Asuka. Not losing the title here. I think we have our setup of who the next champion is going to be, and that's Bobby Roode. Samoa Joe, in the meantime, he can move up to the main roster tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow, because they haven't done NXT yet, but the whole scenario with Samoa Joe, I think, in NXT is done. And it's not because he needs to leave. He's far surpassed so much of what they probably would have imagined him being able to do. I mean, they brought him in for like a test run, and this guy's basically the reason that we have AJ Styles, and basically the same reason we have the club, and all those things are dependent upon the success of Samoa Joe. So Joe deserves that main event spot. And I think that he is going to be moving up to SmackDown by the time that the Royal Rumble starts, maybe. I would not be surprised at all. In fact, I'd be surprised if it doesn't happen. I think Samoa Joe is showing up for the Royal Rumble. I don't think he's winning it. I don't think that he's going to be in the Final Four, but he might. I don't know. I think Joe comes into the Royal Rumble. He has a decent enough showing. He loses because of John Cena, who I think that he's going to be the winner of the Royal Rumble at this point. And then maybe, see, it all depends here about this other thing too. Is if Finn Balor is ready to be able to come in and do the Royal Rumble, Finn Balor wins. Balor wins it. He goes on to defeat Kevin Owens at WrestleMania. And we could still possibly get John Cena versus AJ Styles to win that 16th championship at WrestleMania. But the alternative is John Cena wins. And I think that John Cena versus Samoa Joe is definitely 100% guaranteed, barring injuries, something that's happening next year. 2017 will have that feud. Mark my words. Joe and Cena are friends. They clearly want to work together. John Cena is built at this point in his career to put other people over that are monsters. He's done it before in the past. He can lose a match to Joe, win a match against Joe, that kind of a thing. So I think that they might clash at the Royal Rumble, which means Joe moves up to the main roster and they do all that kind of a thing. So that means, again, that he doesn't win the championship here, because what do you do with Samoa Joe as NXT champion? He's already done it before. There's no point in giving him the title back just to have him retread familiar ground. So Joe loses here, doesn't turn babyface or anything like that. He just flat out loses. And Shinsuke Nakamura moves on. He maybe moves directly onto a feud with Bobby Roode, or maybe they wait until Orlando. I think that they'll wait until Orlando for that, but who knows? I mean, maybe we do get that Royal Rumble spot. And if we do get that Royal Rumble spot, maybe Roode wins the title there. That's where I imagine things going. Nakamura beats Joe. He either has some kind of a side feud with, oh God, who would he actually feud with? Now that I'm thinking about that, because other than Bobby Roode, is there anybody else that's really set up for that? Maybe Andrade Almas? Are they really going to push him to the main event? Ooh, that's tough. Maybe that's actually their go-to plan. Maybe Andrade Cien Almas has turned heel, not only just to give him a change in gimmick and see what works, but maybe he's that guy who Nakamura feuds with next, and Nakamura can beat. Then he loses to Bobby Roode. Now, you know what? That's where I'm going to go from now. And that's the prediction I'm going to stick to unless they completely change it, which who knows? That could be a couple days from now on NXT. They could do some kind of a thing where Almas starts a feud with, who left around here? I don't know, Dozvik. Sure, why not? So, or Dan Matha, or Matha? Is it Matha? I think it's Matha. They got to bring him in eventually, too. And they got Steve Cutler. He ain't doing shit. So, it all boils down to Smojo not winning here. Recapping what my thoughts are here, I think I got some Shinsuke Nakamura winning the NXT Championship match. TM61 wins the tournament finals. Asuka wins the NXT Championship match. Ty Dillinger has a slight possibility of a chance to beat Bobby Roode for a surprise, but I do think that Bobby Roode more than likely comes out with the victory in the end. And the Revival is also victorious, and they retain their championship just to keep it until TM61 can beat them for it. If we have any more matches added to the card, as I mentioned before, that will be added to the page on smarkoutmoment.com, and I'll give my predictions for that. Then in the future, of course, we also have the post show that's going to be popping up after NXT TakeOver, so stay tuned for that in the future. But I want to have you guys leave your comments below and tell me what you think about what's going to be happening at this. Make sure you also hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit that thumbs up button as well, because the more likes that you give this, the more it'll show up on the search engine for YouTube. The more it shows up, the more people watch, the more stuff I can do for you guys. So it's a win-win scenario and all that. And of course, follow us on Facebook and at Smark Out Moment on Twitter and the website itself. Follow me at Tony Mango and at A Mango Tree and at Fanboys Anonymous all over the place. Fanboys Anon on Twitter, because we're just one letter off, those son of a bitches. And of course, subscribe to that YouTube channel as well. And I think that that's about it for all the plugs that I would need to give to you guys. So next time you will be hearing from me is most likely going to be the hot tags for next week. No idea what we're going to be talking about for that. The only hot tag that I have written down is that there's a rumor going around that they might cut down on the number of pay-per-views. So who knows if that's going to be the case, or 2 days from now they're going to debunk the whole damn thing. Hopefully. You know what? Maybe hopefully not. I don't really know. So any hot tags that happen over the next few days, that will be covered probably Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday. And Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday night or Thursday, we're going to do our Ask Him. And then Wednesday night or Thursday afternoon or whatever the case may be, we will be doing our predictions for not NXT, we already did that, for Survivor Series 2016. Then, obviously, piggybacking off of the NXT post show on Saturday, then Sunday we've got Survivor Series, so there's the Survivor Series post show. So that's your content. 5 videos coming up next week for you guys to pay attention to. That's it for this week, though, unless anything happens with a small package. So stay tuned for all that kind of stuff, guys. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and I am being counted out.